Some historical mysteries endure simply because the only people who knew the truth never came back to tell it. In the winter of 1959, 9 young hikers traveled deep into the Ural Mountains and disappeared. The tragedy of Dyatlov Pass is defined by a complete erasure. Searchers eventually found the grim physical aftermath of their camp, but the final hours of these 9 individuals were entirely wiped away. On January 23, 1959, the halls of the Ural Polytechnic Institute were loud and chaotic. Students were packing backpacks, laying out skis, and checking maps for their upcoming winter expeditions. 23-year-old Igor Dyatlov stood at the center of it all. As the leader of this specific expedition, he ran his team through meticulous equipment checks. This was a highly capable group, with hundreds of miles of deep winter wilderness trekking already under their belts. They were confident and eager to leave. But as they gathered their gear, a local worker offered a quiet warning. The mountains do not care how experienced you are. These students were not amateurs. Every member of the team had logged hundreds of hours in these conditions, utilizing a system of checks and survival protocols designed specifically for the environment they were about to enter. The trip north began with days on a slow train cutting across the frozen Soviet countryside. The group played harmonicas, sang old songs, and took photographs, enjoying the camaraderie of close friends. Eventually, the roads ran out. The truck dropped them off at the literal end of civilization. Beyond this point, there were no villages, no telephone lines, and no possibility of rapid rescue. For the next several days, they glided on skis across untouched snow, crossed frozen rivers, and climbed icy slopes. Even as the physical toll of the wilderness increased, their spirits remained incredibly high. Every evening, they pitched their large canvas tent, cooked hot meals, and swapped stories. Their routine successes created a sense of security, even as their geographical isolation became absolute. But the environment was changing. As they climbed higher, the protective forests thinned out, exposing them to barren, rocky terrain and plummeting temperatures. The group noticed an eerie shift in the atmosphere. The birds were gone. The sound of running water stopped. The mountains went completely, uncomfortably silent. Then the weather turned. Heavy snow and a massive whiteout storm dropped visibility to near zero. The blinding conditions pushed them slightly off their intended route through the valley, drifting them higher onto an exposed ridge. Realizing their navigation error, Igor chose to stay on the ridge. By digging into the snowy slope and making camp immediately, the team maintained a fixed position rather than risking a blind descent into the storm. It was a tactical survival decision. By prioritizing immediate shelter over the hazards of navigating a mountain in zero visibility, the group followed standard procedure for high-altitude wilderness conditions. Once inside the tent, the contrast was immediate. Outside, the wind battered the canvas, but inside, the 9 hikers ate warm food, laughed, and planned the first meals they would eat when they got home. Hours passed. The portable stove slowly burned down. One by one, they crawled into their sleeping bags, having successfully navigated the worst of the day's weather. Sometime in the darkness, Igor woke up. He heard something cutting through the noise of the storm, a deep, distant, rolling sound. It didn't sound like wind. It sounded distinctly mechanical or geological. The noise grew closer, and the tent suddenly began to shake violently. Nobody spoke. In the pitch black, the awoken hikers simply looked at each other as the sound echoed over them. 9 friends settled into a routine they had practiced dozens of times before, but that routine was about to be shattered, forcing them out into the storm to face whatever was waiting in the darkness. A relentless blizzard is currently engulfing the mountainside. The wind is howling across the slope, violently whipping the snow through the pitch black. Inside a small canvas tent, 9 experienced hikers are huddled together, sharing what will turn out to be their final moments of safety and camaraderie. A deep, mysterious rumbling suddenly vibrates through the ground. The group falls silent as the sound cuts through the noise of the storm. This noise signals that their sanctuary has failed. The thin canvas walls, their only barrier against the freezing night, can no longer protect them from whatever is moving down the mountain. A sharp crack echoes through the air, and the tent shakes violently as snow pours onto the roof. In seconds, the group is forced into a state of survival panic. With the main entrance buried under heavy snow, Igor Dyatlov makes a split-second decision. He pulls his knife and slashes directly through the side of the tent from the inside. Cold air and snow explode into the space as the hikers pour through the narrow opening. They have no time to grab heavy jackets, gloves, or even boots. Some enter the blizzard wearing nothing but socks. In a fraction of a second, their situation has changed. They are no longer sheltering from a storm. They are fleeing into the darkness, a move that fundamentally shifts their chances of survival. The moment they exit the tent, they are swallowed by complete darkness. Visibility drops to near zero, leaving the group with no visual landmarks. Every step down the slope is a struggle. They are forced to wade through waist-deep snow, while hurricane-force winds actively push them off balance. This diagram illustrates vasoconstriction. When exposed to extreme cold, the human body automatically pulls blood away from extremities to protect vital organs in the core. While this keeps the heart beating, it sacrifices the hands. Localized temperatures drop, nerve function stops, and manual dexterity vanishes. Igor attempts to keep the group moving. He points them downhill, organizing a single-file line to push through the whiteout toward the tree line. The environment is now working against their biology. With every passing minute, the mountain is stripping away the physical strength they need to stay alive. After a brutal descent, they reach the edge of the forest. The towering cedar trees finally provide a physical barrier that blocks the worst of the wind. Exhausted, the group collapses into the snow. It is their first moment to breathe since fleeing the tent. They need a fire immediately, but with their fingers frozen and uncooperative, snapping branches and striking a spark becomes a nearly impossible task. Eventually, a spark catches. An orange glow illuminates their faces, providing a brief moment of hope. But this relief is a deadly illusion. While a small fire provides psychological comfort, it cannot generate enough heat to stabilize their dropping core temperatures. As they huddle around the weak flames, Zina points out the reality of their situation. Every essential survival tool, their boots, insulated layers, and food, is still back at the abandoned camp. Rustam's instinct is to return for the gear, but Igor realizes the storm higher up the slope has grown too intense to navigate. This graph models the math of their situation. Attempting to hike back up that incline, fighting hurricane-force headwinds without proper clothing, would drain their remaining body heat faster than they could physically climb. The decision to flee the tent saved them in the short term. However, it also placed them in a geographical trap that leaves them entirely exposed to the elements. Suddenly, a loud snap echoes from the darkness high above. A thick branch breaks and crashes into the snow, causing the group to jump back. The sound serves as a reminder of their vulnerability. Even here, sheltered by the trees, they are surrounded by shadows and falling snow, with no way to predict what will happen next. The hikers' survival instincts allowed them to escape the immediate threat on the mountain, but those same instincts have left them huddling under a cedar tree, facing a waiting game against the cold that they cannot win. Underneath a giant cedar tree, a small fire is dying. Surrounded by a massive mountain storm, 9 hikers huddle together in the dark. This diagram illustrates a human body rapidly losing its core temperature in a sub-zero environment. As the air pulls warmth away, their faces pale and their hands go numb. Without their boots and heavy winter coats, their bodies are entirely exposed. The math of the situation is blunt. Every minute they sit by the fading flames, they lose degrees of body heat they cannot replace. If they stay, they freeze to death. Their only chance for survival sits hundreds of yards away in the dark, their abandoned tent. Igor Dyatlov stands up and faces the mountain. Waiting out the storm will kill them, and as leader, he makes the hard call to move. 4 hikers will push back up the slope into the blizzard to retrieve the gear. The others will stay behind, tasked with keeping the cedar fire alive. This split is a calculated response to the environment. They are deploying the 2 primary biological defenses a human has against extreme cold: active exertion, generated by the group climbing, and passive insulation, maintained by the group staying near the fire. Igor, Rustam, Zina, and Alexander leave the tree line and hit a physical wall. They are walking directly into a Category 5 blizzard. Pushing through hurricane-force winds uphill requires massive caloric burn. Every step demands explosive muscular energy to avoid being blown backward. As they climb, whiteout conditions instantly erase footprints. With zero visibility, all landmarks vanish. They lose spatial orientation completely in the swirling snow. They search the darkness, but the tent is gone, swallowed entirely by the storm. Out of options and out of time, they are forced to turn back. But the cold has already done its work. Sub-zero temperatures rapidly drain cellular energy reserves. The extreme environment entirely neutralizes their active exertion strategy, shutting down their muscles before they can safely descend. Back at the cedar tree, the passive defense strategy is failing. The wind continually strips away the heat from the struggling fire. Alexander directs the remaining group into a shallow ravine nearby. They immediately began carving a shelter out of the packed snow. This cross-section diagram shows the precise thermal logic of a snow trench. By digging below the surface level, the violent wind deflects over the top. Inside the cavity, a pocket of trapped, stable heat can form. Executing this defense carries a heavy physical toll. They dig through ice and packed snow using broken branches and their bare, bleeding hands. It is a scientifically sound shelter. However, passive insulation requires a heat source to trap. Because their bodies lack the initial caloric warmth required to heat the small space, the trench cannot save them. On the slope, the climbers stumble and fall as their core temperatures drop to fatal levels. In the ravine below, the shelter group succumbs as the fire finally extinguishes. The mountain elements overpower their physiological limits. The forest falls completely silent. For decades, the public focused on sensationalized theories. Stories of alien encounters, secret military weapons, and supernatural events completely overshadowed the physical evidence the hikers left behind. The reality of the mountain is far more grounded. When the storm finally cleared, it left behind a quiet, deadly landscape and a half-buried tent waiting in the snow. The exact sequence of events is etched in their frozen trail, the bloodied branches of the cedar, and the carefully constructed snow ravine. The 9 friends employed brilliant, highly calculated tactics to fight off the elements. They executed a truly valiant survival strategy. In the end, they simply ran out of time and energy against the mountain's sheer, indifferent force of nature. In February 1959, deep in the frozen expanse of the Ural Mountains, an expedition of 9 experienced hikers went completely silent. At first, their families assumed severe weather had simply delayed their return, but as weeks passed without a single telegram or radio message, that hope decayed into panic. The authorities finally launched a massive rescue operation, dispatching teams of soldiers, experienced mountaineers, and civilian volunteers to scour the region. For days, they found absolutely nothing. The searchers were met only by endless snow, freezing winds, and the brutal reality of a vast, empty landscape. The mountain's immense scale and hostility made the site an inescapable, isolated frozen tomb. The silence finally broke on February 26th. A single searcher stopped in his tracks, spotting a dark corner of canvas poking through the white surface. Teams rushed forward, desperately digging with shovels and their bare hands to free the heavy canvas from the snow. When they finally cleared the perimeter, the rescuers stood in shock. The tent was still standing and fully intact, but it was completely empty. Surviving in this extreme environment required the shelter of that tent. Its abandonment meant something had forced the hikers into the cold, leaving their only protection behind. Inside, flashlights revealed a bizarre scene. Warm boots, thick winter jackets, food rations, cameras, and personal diaries were all perfectly placed. Everything was exactly where it had been left. The pristine state of the gear strongly implied the group fully intended to return within minutes. Investigators quickly realized the heavy canvas shelter had not been torn by winter storms, but violently sliced open from the inside. Outside, a rescuer called out a new discovery. A trail of footprints led away from camp, descending sharply toward the dark tree line. Looking closer revealed a horrifying anomaly. Amidst freezing conditions, some prints were made by boots, others by socks, and several clear impressions showed someone walking entirely barefoot. With every step increasing the tension, the rescue team followed this desperate trail downward, deep into the darkness of the woods. Experienced survivalists rarely slice open their only shelter and run barefoot into the freezing darkness. Whatever happened on that slope outweighed the immediate threat of freezing to death. Hours later, beneath a giant cedar tree, they made their first heartbreaking discovery. 2 hikers lay dead near the remains of a meager campfire. High above them, several thick branches of the cedar were broken off. The search continued up the slope. Between that tree and the abandoned tent, 3 more hikers were found scattered in the snow. Their frozen bodies were positioned facing uphill, as if they spent their final moments desperately trying to crawl back to camp. It took an agonizing wait for the spring thaw in May to reveal a hidden ravine deeper in the woods. There, beneath layers of melted snow, rescuers discovered a makeshift branch shelter, along with the bodies of the final 4 hikers. The mountain had eventually yielded all 9 victims, but their chaotic locations, missing clothing, and unexplained states only fragmented the timeline. Whatever order they had when they left the tent, logic clearly died with them on the slope. In the immediate aftermath, investigators spent months poring over the tragedy. They analyzed every recovered diary, studied every photograph, and inspected every piece of abandoned gear. Yet the official Soviet conclusion offered no real answers. It vaguely stated that the hikers had died due to an unknown, compelling natural force. Over the decades, researchers applied modern science to the mystery. The leading natural theories focus on sudden, localized slab avalanches, or violent freezing downslope windstorms known as katabatic winds. When natural explanations fell short, more extreme hypotheses emerged, ranging from foreign sabotage to secret Soviet military weapons testing occurring in the remote Urals. But this is where modern science ultimately fails the case. An avalanche might explain why they fled the tent, but it fails to explain the campfire. A military event might explain the severe injuries found in the ravine, but it doesn't align with the orderly, paced footprints in the snow. Despite over 6 decades of forensic and technological advancement, our best scientific models shatter when they are applied to the totality of this evidence. If you look at that landscape today, the freezing winds and the lonely mountain pass remain exactly as they were in the winter of 1959. 9 friends embarked on a journey filled with optimism and hope. In the end, only a chilling enigma returned to civilization. The Dyatlov Pass Incident stands as a permanent, humbling reminder. We may map the world and analyze its data, but nature still possesses secrets powerful enough to bury the truth forever.